Welcome back to another Insider Session podcast, the show where the travel advisors actually selling and selling our products share what they've learned so you can borrow it. Today's guest is a special one. Suzanne Upton of Travel with Suzanne has just come back from the Rhône, Sensations of Lyon and Provence, aboard an Emerald Star ship. And here's what makes Suzanne worth your next half hour. This was her sixth Emerald cruise and her ninth hosted group travel event. When someone keeps coming back 6 times and keeps bringing groups with her, that tells you something before she says a word. She's also got a story for you. Suzanne booked a July departure for one very big reason: the lavender fields of Provence, and lavender had other plans. So how she handled that with a group on board is a masterclass every advisor should hear. Suzanne, welcome to the Insider Session.
Hi, Garrett. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
My pleasure. So before we get to the Rhône, for anyone who hasn't met you yet, tell us about Travel with Suzanne, who you are, who you book, and how did this travel become your thing?
So I opened my agency about 10 years ago after kind of a lifetime of travel, living overseas. I've lived in several countries, and I just, have a love for it. So at this point, 10 years in, about 75% of my business is European FIT, with the bulk of that being Italy, Greece, and Ireland. But I also have a pretty booming group business. I try to host 2 or 3 hosted trips every year.
Excellent. All right. So before we sail into Suzanne's sailing, let me set the table for anyone who's newer to our portfolio, because knowing which brand fits your client is half the battle. We have 2 distinct brands. Scenic is our ultra luxury, truly all-inclusive line, butler service, every guest, drinks, dining, excursions, gratuities. Emeralds, where Suzanne just sailed, is our premium luxury brand, what the crew themselves call relaxed luxury. A contemporary starship, included excursions in every port, Emerald Active and Emerald Plus options layered on, beautifully designed spaces, and exceptional value. Same family, 2 different clients, and today you're going to hear what 6 sailings worth of experience on the Emerald side actually feels like. The itinerary: 8 days, Lyon to Arles with Mekong, Tournon, Viviers, Avignon. You're sailing on the Saône and the Rhône, the Beaujolais region to Provence, the wine country, the Roman history, Van Gogh's footsteps, and in theory, lavender. Suzanne, let's get into it. Let's start with your credentials, because they're remarkable. This was your 6th Emerald cruise and your 9th hosted group event. What keeps you coming back to this brand and this style of travel?
Well, let's talk about how I found Emerald, because it was sort of by accident. In 2021, my mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and she really wanted to go to Oberammergau. It had been delayed by 2 years because of COVID. And she and I wanted to plan a trip knowing that it might be her last big trip. So I suggested to her that we do a river cruise. I had actually never been on a river cruise myself. And she agreed that this was a great way to go see Oberammergau and see a little bit more of Europe. I gave her several options, and in the end, she picked, with some nudging from me, Emerald, because we felt like it would be a really good fit for us, the fun vibe, the relaxed luxury. We had a really, really great time. We actually spent a month in Europe. We did the Oberammergau land extension and saw the Passion Play. Then we sailed on the Danube. We went to England for a week, where we had lived as a family in the 1980s. And then we did a Greek Isles cruise, and that trip with my mom actually really launched my group business, because from there I booked my first group with Emerald on the Rhine, and I also simultaneously booked another group to the Greek Isles. Sorry, not with Emerald or Scenic, but those 2 trips really launched my my group business.
Well, we can talk about that yacht Greek Isle cruise maybe for a future one, but
absolutely.
So a big part of choosing July departure was the lavender fields and some of your history as a child, and you told me about, and the heat pushed the harvest a little early. So walk us through the moment you found out and how you handled it with your group.
So I usually host most of my groups a little bit off season for a couple of reasons. I like to be out of the heat of the summer or whatever the off season is for where we're going. I like to avoid the crowds, and sometimes it's more cost effective for my clients. So that's kind of been my MO. But for this trip, the Rhône, I hearkened back to memories of being an exchange student in high school. So the last time I was actually in some of these cities, I was 17 years old. And I saw the lavender fields then, and I have just such wonderful memories of seeing that as a young girl. And I wanted to recapture that magic for myself, but also share it with my clients. So I booked this trip for July, and a lot of my marketing and a lot of my talking to my clients, who are repeat group clients at this point, we talked about this sort of personal connection with me with the timing. So we knew about the heat wave that had been happening in France for several weeks. It never occurred to me, even as an Indiana farm girl, that the harvest would be early. We were prepared for the heat. We were prepared for the humidity. But it wasn't until about 2 days before we got to Vivier, which is where we were to see the lavender fields, when our wonderful cruise director, Darren, shared the news that because of the heat wave, the harvest had happened about 2 weeks early. So there was a little bit of a collective groan in the room. My clients were champs, though. They were actually more concerned with me and my disappointment than anything else. One of the things that I do when I host my groups is I try to set up my clients to be prepared for contingency plans. And with River, we talk a lot about water volume and how the rivers are running. We were really happy that week to not be on the Rhine, which was having lots of water issues. We were on the Rhône sailing along beautifully, never expecting that the weather was going to affect our lavender fields. So in the end, it was fine. We got to see the lavender production. We took some pictures. And the favorite part of having this disappointment was that we actually had a lot of fun in our WhatsApp group modifying the photos of the lavender fields to make them a little more purple. So if I were to share my photo album with you, you'd see photos of me with some of my clients and Arnold Schwarzenegger and a goat, and a variety of funny things that we just ran with it and made the best of an unfortunate situation, which is all you can do.
That's all you can do. That sounds great. And you do have some really great clients to just go with the flow. And sometimes that's what you have to do. So on your 6 sailings and a vegetarian, what should advisors know about how Emerald handles dietary requirements, and what's your advice for flagging clients' needs so they're handled well from day one?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm a lifelong vegetarian. I'm also the mom of 2 children who have multiple anaphylactic food allergies. So this is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. So when I first sailed with Emerald, not only was I a vegetarian, but I also was eating a gluten-free diet. So I think it's really important when you book your clients that you take advantage of those little check boxes that are in there to talk about things that are related to their diet, their mobility, if they have sleep apnea, if they have Parkinson's disease, whatever it is, you can click those things. In terms of diet, that translates to a note in your room when you're board with an opportunity to meet with the maitre d' and sit and talk about that diet, those diet restrictions. For me, I'm not a vegan, so I eat dairy, I eat eggs. So I met with the maitre d' on that first sailing. We talked about my restrictions. We talked about gluten-free. We talked about what the options were. I can tell you that Emerald has starters or appetizers and entrees every meal that are vegetarian. And then in the Emerald Classics, which are available every day, they've got that vegetarian lasagna, which I love, but I don't want to eat it all week. So it's nice to have those other options. And the wait staff are really great about making accommodations. If I see a side for one of the other mains, I'll ask for it. They'll put it on my plate. I've asked them to give me the cheese plate, which is usually a dessert option, as an appetizer on different days. So I think the key is flow of communication. And if I had a client who had a lot of really strong restrictions, especially true food allergies, I would actually encourage them to talk to the maitre d', look at the menu the night before, and maybe put together a custom plate, which I am confident they would be happy to do. My restrictions don't require that, but some people's might.
Absolutely. They would absolutely meet with them and point out what is available to them and offer also alternatives additionally to when they can. They again, like you said, they will meet with you daily and go over the menu and make you as comfortable as possible with those dietary restrictions or just requirements that you have. So let's talk about Avignon Day. That's the big crescendo of the week, right? You've got canoeing, you got Pont du Gard, you got a Provençal dinner from the Top Chef finalist Fabien Morreale, and a classical concert in the evening. What stood out to you that day?
Well, the day was bonkers in a good way. Back to my 17-year-old self, I really wanted to see Pont du Gard, the Roman aqueduct. But my group clients, we love wine. So we always do all of the wine tasting on every trip that we do. And so my group had all signed up for the Châteauneuf-du-Pape wine tasting,
Right.
But that Discover More conflicted with the Pont du Gard tour that day. I knew going in that the optional kayaking trip would kayak under the aqueduct. But I also knew that was going to be a really, really big day. So if I'm being honest with you, Garrett, I actually got on this boat thinking that I might try to hire a taxi for myself and whichever of my clients really wanted to see Pont du Gard. And there were a handful that did, and see if we could just kind of piece it together in the morning, knowing that we had Fabienne's dinner and the concert that night. I was warned that wasn't a good idea. So I signed up to kayak. I'm a very experienced kayaker. I've kayaked in a blizzard in Antarctica. I've done lots of lake kayaking and some river kayaking. So I wasn't concerned about the kayaking per se. I was concerned about the whole day kind of adding up. I'm so glad I did it, but it was exhausting. You kayak 8 kilometers. The last half of the kayak is kind of into the wind. So I was tired, but it was well worth it. We got back to the boat. We quick changed and had lunch and went out to Châteauneuf-du-Pape and had our lovely wine tasting at the beautiful vineyard out there. And then it was back to the boat where we changed clothes again and had our introduction to Fabien, who talked about his beautiful Provençal dinner. And then we had dinner, which was lovely, even as a vegetarian. And I can say that the meat eaters at my table, also loved their meal. And then we whisked our way into town for this candlelight concert with a classical trio in the church. It was beautiful, but it was a long day, and I think we were all ready to go to bed when it was over. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that is a busy day, and that's kind of like the flexibility that the cruise also presents to you, where you can do as much as you want or as little as you want, but it's hard to pass up those options of canoeing down the Rhône and going to Pont du Gard and the aqueduct and the wine tasting in the Pope's Palace there, and then the concert. It is a busy day, but it's a fun, packed day.
Absolutely.
So thank you for sharing that, because that is important to go over that day. So what does your clients say that you personally keep choosing Emerald, and how do you use your own loyalty as a selling tool?
Obviously, in our business, we have to match, our clients' needs, but they rely on us, and we all kind of have a client profile. My clients are Midwesterners, generally speaking, and they do love, as a rule, that kind of relaxed atmosphere, an opportunity to dress up, but no requirement to do so. And they love just meeting the kinds of people on board that Emerald attracts. I was actually pleasantly surprised on this trip that I think Americans were in the minority. We had a lot of British and Australian families as well, which you always have, but it seems like the sailings that I've been on have been more Americans than anything else. So this was a really fun group overall, in addition to my really fun group that was on the boat. So I think my clients, if I'm I'm talking about FIT, they always appreciate hearing my perspective. I've sailed with Scenic as well, and sharing the differences there and what's right for the client. In terms of my group business, my clients who go on all of my group trips love kind of coming home to Emerald. They know when they step on the boat what they're going to get. They know where the coffee machine is. They know how things go. And so there's no kind of like lay of the land. I mean, they're not big boats. So it's not like a cruise ship where you have to spend 3 days figuring out where everything is, but there's a certain comfort to knowing what's going to happen, how the day is going to go. And that just really works for my group. So I have no plans in changing my group business with Emerald. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I'm flying to Ho Chi Minh City and hosting a group on the Mekong on Emerald as well. So it's a partnership that I really love. And, my clients also love that in my phone, I have contacts for the company. And that's just grown over the years of my groups. So if there's an issue, which there rarely is, I can call someone, I can get information. Those relationships are important to our clients.
That's great. All right, let's do some rapid fire. Short answers. First thing that comes to mind, best vegetarian bite on the trip.
Okay, hands down for me, first night, Chef Adrian, your goat cheese souffle was to die for. But I give second place to Fabienne's grandmother's olive oil apple cake. It was delicious.
It is delicious. I've had that. All right. So of your 6 Emerald sailings, the one you would repeat tomorrow?
Easy. I would do this one again. I think there were things that I didn't get to do on this cruise because, as we talked about, you have to make decisions. You can pack your day or not. I like to have a little more downtime. But, I would have loved to have spent some time just walking around in Arles, and I didn't get to do that in Avignon and in Arles, actually, because of the schedule. So I would go back. There's some unfinished business for me there. So
I think that's
you might see me back on the Rhône soon.
Yeah, I think that's the case on most cruises, right?
Yeah.
You never get to see everything, especially when you have many options to see and you're given all these choices to do things that are on the river and then where we bring you off the river and a little motor coach for another adventure. So there's just so much to see, and you can go back many times, I think, and not repeat and have a different experience.
But I've been on the Rhône, I've been on the Danube and the Rhine twice with Emerald. And I would do those again too, because there are little places that I'd love to go back and see and things that I wish that I'd had more time. I mean, they're just a taste, and you want to go back and keep exploring.
That's great. Suzanne, 6 cruises, 9 groups, 1 early lavender harvest, and a masterclass in rolling with it. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. And she's not slowing down. As she mentioned, next month, Suzanne takes another Emerald long haul to the Mekong. So this episode is any indication we may need to get you back on for another interview when you return from the Mekong. One sentence, why the Mekong? Or what? Why?
You know what? So this is a really interesting part about the group business. A lot of my next group itineraries come out of dinner table conversation with my clients when we're on a trip. And the Mekong is one of those. On the Danube, it was on the Rhine 2 years ago. We were at the table and somebody said, does this cruise line go to the Mekong? And I said, yeah, they do. Absolutely. And so we all kind of looked at each other. And when I get home from those trips, I reach out to my clients and say, hey, we talked at dinner. Is it a serious interest? And do I have, the group to put together? It's a smaller group than a European trip, but that's okay. So it's all about collaborating and listening to what your clients are telling you. And so here we are. We're going on the Mekong.
Amazing. So to every advisor listening, if you want help identifying whether Scenic or Emerald is the right fit for your client, itinerary details on the Rhône or side-by-side comparisons for a client you're working on, reach out to me directly. That's what I'm here for. You can find Suzanne at Travel with Suzanne, and we'll be tagging Suzanne on the post here, so you'll be able to connect with her through social media if you have any questions or you want to and then please share this with an episode or share this with an advisor who maybe needs a little information on Emerald or Scenic. This has been another insider session. I'm so grateful for you, Suzanne. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, I'm Garrett, and I will see you on the next one.